So let me just do quickly a quick introduction about me, and then I will give the word to Jordan. So I'm Dan Baker, in Dutch Bakker, and I'm working now for 13, 14 years in like different apps, SaaS companies in a couple of countries, actually in Holland, Belgium, and also abroad, overseas. So yeah, and I'm actually excited. I'm now the head of growth at S4D, and we help quick service restaurant chains with an omni-channel solution. And I'm in charge of like marketing, sales, and partnerships. And yeah, that ranges from finding clients, having a new website. I'm maybe curious if Jordan saw it even, but we did a rebranding to S4D from Solutions for Delivery with like a new logo and stuff. So that is it about me, and I'm excited to share some industry insights with someone who I think can introduce himself. I'm curious, Jordan, for how many years are already in the quick service restaurant and especially in Apache Pizza. So up to you.
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Pendleton. I've been working with the Apache brand for the last 15 years. There was a little break in there for some exams at one point, but yeah, for the last 15 years, started off in the restaurant, just working for my dad on a Sunday during school. Then eventually I was leading Saturday night shifts in the restaurant. I also did a lot of work and covered a lot of work in the production end of things. We had our own dough production facility in head office as well. So I've done bits and pieces there. Then I eventually joined as an area manager or regional manager. And I had about 60, 70 stores kind of to manage from a regional manager perspective for a little while, a couple of years. And then as I kind of finished my degree, ended up moving in towards the IT side and taking more of a focus on bringing Apache into a new digital era, essentially.
Okay. That's nice. And just out of curiosity, Apache Pizza, where does the name come from?
Apache came from, it was originally, there's a nice kind of Native American feel to it as a theme, but there was a primary driving factor in the fact that the name needed to start with an A, so that it was always at the top of the phone books and the yellow pages. Originally, when you were going to search, it'll be kind of top of the mind, as well as a lot of lists. Even still today, a lot of lists are still alphabetical, so A is always a good brand decision.
Okay, cool. So it's not that you guys came from America, but you're just Irish and then went for like
no,
internet.
We've had a couple Native American franchisees or with Native American heritage as well.
Ah, that's cool. That's a nice fact. So what I understand from where you're coming from, you started really in the restaurant, from making maybe even the pizzas, doing the delivery, going to managing more an area with 60, 70 stores, and now you're more on the IT side. So I think that's a big plus of understanding like the whole business, right? So you also know what are the needs. And if we look back now, I think now you're working together with S4D for around 5 years. If we go back to like 5 years ago, and you say you want to take the next step in digital, right? So when you started on the digital side, like what were the big challenges for you, and how are you viewing them today compared to when you started to tackle the digital challenges?
Yeah, so that was actually my first kind of job within the IT side of it for Apache, was to kind of identify weaknesses and areas and go back and get feedback from all the franchisees. Went and did interviews all across the country to kind of find out where the pain points were and stuff like that. So from a head office perspective, we always had a kind of messy management system. I'm sure a lot of you might be familiar with the way Just Eat works at the moment, where each menu is individual for a specific store, and they often do kind of copyings. It was a similar system, which when you're a small office working on a full brand of over 100 stores at that time, it can be quite cumbersome in terms of the workload. Knowing what I know now as well, we also would have had a lot of poor kind of data structures and poor data habits within the stores. in terms of there was a system where you could add a product manually on our old, we'll call it our old POS supplier, our X. You were able to actually just add in a product on a whim. So let's say someone came in and ordered something that wasn't quite in the system, or they would just add in a product to their POS in their open order section, which from a data point of view is extremely messy.
Yeah, because then each store, let's say they all sell maybe on, and they could also add maybe products that are not coming from headquarter list, right? That maybe,
Exactly.
I'm just saying, just giving an example, maybe they do suddenly like chicken waffles. I'm just saying something totally that's not you, but in that way and then you also lose a bit track of the sale, right? Because you miss that from a headquarter perspective, the overview of all the data and all your sales. Do I summarize that in a good way?
Yeah, so you're getting, if there's some weird, they wanted to do, I don't know, like ketchup chips, cheesy ketchup chips or something strange like that. That's a chip sale that we wanted to be able to record that we're now missing because it's down as this unique product in the system. We could still see it there as a sale of a cheesy ketchup chip, but the spelling wasn't always quite there either. So there was a load of products, a load of information in there that was really, really bad, really, really poor. That would have made it really difficult to actually manage and get good insights from.
Cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, like did you also have like before like that you had to have the hardware also from your POS supplier, or how did that work in the past?
There was definitely more strict requirements on the hardware. It had to be a Windows system. They would always turn off the updates on the Windows systems as well, which is never a good thing to do long term. Obviously, Windows do those updates for mostly security purposes. So that was a little bit of a security risk there as well. And it was more of a decision from the POS supplier. We weren't in that side of things. We weren't doing the installs or anything. We weren't involved in any way. So it was part of the POS supplier's process to kind of turn off those updates so that they didn't have to come back.
Yeah, they didn't have to update the system, right?
Exactly.
In a way.
Yeah.
So how we're working out together is more that I think like every 2 weeks we have like an update. So that always keeps improving. But going like in a way hardware independent, like how important was this for you and the franchisees in like choosing like a new POS partner in that way?
In choosing the partner, it was paramount because we had different PCs out across the brand. If we had to, I know we were looking at other POS systems at the time, obviously, and the cost implications of going with one of the other partners just on that initial kind of setup side would have been massive, a huge hit. Essentially to try and get all the stores over, and because the decisions coming from head office to switch to this new supplier, the stores aren't always going to be on board. And if you tag on a huge 10K hardware bill on top of that, they're only going to push back even harder. So it either has to be covered by head office, which isn't ideal, or you have to somehow convince them to pay 10K for this new system that they aren't sure of.
No, that's of course a challenge. And maybe about that relationship with the franchisees. So how is it you want to introduce new ways of working, maybe new software, you want to maybe launch a new app. How do you maybe other franchisee people work from headquarters with the franchisees? Could you have some tips like how you handle that relationship with the franchisees?
The relationship with the franchisees is definitely one that you have to treat really carefully. So I see ourselves as a supplier to the franchisee, in the sense that you would always want to keep the client happy, right?
Yeah.
As much as possible. There's obviously a lot there in terms of keeping a supplier and client relationship as healthy as possible. But for keeping the franchisees happy, that is kind of paramount. So we always have, currently we have our key franchisees who kind of speak for a number of franchisees kind of in their area or their vicinity. So we have different franchisees dotted around from around the country that will know the market of, Dublin City, Cork City, the more rural areas, Northern Ireland. So we get proper insights from all over the country and what the needs are from all over the country. We're always in constant communication, always keep an open phone line and open dialogue with all the franchisees as much as possible. And in recent years, we've got our FBL team, our franchise business leader or area manager team has increased to, we've got 5 of them now going around the country. So the number of stores that each of them can help is down to like 35 to 45-ish. So they have more stores that each of them can kind of go to,
And how do you go about like introducing like a new cost, but that there is an ROI? Because I think that's always the challenge, right? You think from headquarters to move long-term forward, like for example, it could be introducing like an app, and then there is ROI for it, but you need to explain this to the franchisees. Do you have maybe tips how you do that, or what is your experience with these type of things?
So in our experience, it's mainly about keeping it the financial side of it needs to be stress-free. So we introduced our digital fee a while ago, or a couple of years back. We saw that there was an industry trend where the likes of Just Eat and other third-party providers are all charging a % fee for the services, essentially. So what we as head office did was create a digital fee for the franchisee that goes on top of their franchise fee, essentially. However, it's not for profit. It's a fee that is purely to cover everything under that digital umbrella. So the likes of the entire POS, our POS, our SEO, our the likes of any new app that we might introduce should kind of come under and fit under that umbrella. Any other third-party services we want to introduce, like using Google Maps, the location APIs, all those kind of costs, they don't have to worry about anything like that individually. The server costs, that all kind of comes under that one digital fee. And because it's a % fee, it should grow with time, as we also expect online sales to grow as a percentage. We're hoping that it can cover more and more and give us more and more ability to add these new features like a new app, for instance.
Okay, so maybe already giving like now, we developed something with S4D, Apache, and Molly. The new setup, the Molly Connect integration. Like, what are the pros and cons regarding this? Because you're actually touching it a bit already. So could you maybe highlight a bit what you recently did on that side?
So we're planning and making a system whereby with the online payments as they come through into head office, they're essentially split instantly. Or what we're developing with S4D is a slightly more complex system where we get 3% of the net sales, but it isn't necessarily 3% per person, because there's some people who would be underpaying and some people would be overpaying or getting a discount, or depending on their actual performance. So that system is essentially a way of automating the payments. So the pros there are obviously, we want to be able to keep it as simple for the franchisees as possible. We don't want to strain the relationship at all. So nobody wants to be the guy that's chasing the franchisee for money.
Exactly.
And so through this system, we'll be able to deduct or net off any payments that we need from the franchisee from their online payments. So in future, we'll also be able to net off like their franchise fee or anything else. There's always a miscellaneous payment that needs to be made somewhere. So we can net off those payments off their online payments, and we can say, right, this is how much this cost. We'll take it off your online payments over the next 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. And then they go, yeah, cool, don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So, and what is then what does it say, for example, on like, employees doing this finance stuff before and now? Like on the FTEs, like how much time do you save as a headquarters and like instead of doing this manually to doing this automatically?
So yeah, so you're essentially saving a full-time job in terms of an accountant. We're still going to need an accountant, obviously, to keep everything in order, but it lets them focus their priorities more on maybe reporting or finance and kind of diving into data rather than focusing on emailing and chasing up franchisees. But I think the primary part isn't what it saves you in time, it's what it saves you in, or what it benefits you in keeping a healthy relationship with your franchisees.
Yeah, okay, exactly, because it is not that you need to send that invoice and chase them and make sure it's paid, but it's all automatically going, and yeah, then it's part of the business moving forward, right?
And you also have the added benefit of there's no risk of manual error.
Yeah, that's all. That's of course a big plus, huh?
Yes.
Actually, what you're saying now, like I think we also discussed it before. Like it's really interesting to balance that all these relationships that you have with different stakeholders, right? From headquarters to franchisees to suppliers. So, yeah, how do you maintain that balance with all these different stakeholders?
So yeah, the most important piece of that kind of puzzle there is just keeping a good working relationship with each partner. So us being the franchisor, we're in the middle where we have our franchisees as our client, essentially. We've got our suppliers and the suppliers to the franchisees. And then you have the consumer. So from a head office perspective, we're bang smack in the middle of everything, right?
Yeah.
So there's a change in mindset when you kind of break free from that supplier client type of relationship. It's like a realization from both parties that when you notice that you kind of want the best from each other, it's mutually beneficial. So if the client is happy with the supplier's work, then they're going to stay with them and want to keep using them and want to keep working with them. But on the other side of the coin, if the client is trying to squeeze every penny or be a constant nuisance, constantly pushing, the supplier won't be as happy and might not want to work with them or want to help them as much. So there's that fine balance there of making sure that your supplier, while also requesting kind of what you need, but doing so in a way that that your supplier stays happy to work with you and not being the thorn in their side to get things done, but instead helping them achieve, which is then helping you get your results.
Okay, that's an interesting one, and because when everybody is happy in doing business together, you have a good relationship and you can improving and keep building. Of course, that's a bit what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
And maybe
so, like if the supplier isn't as happy to work with you, then the quality goes down. The client's no longer happy, and you end up in this endless kind of downward spiral where the relationship eventually breaks down.
Yeah. And if we then maybe look at as for being the digital supplier a couple of years ago, and I think there was some fast system onboarding needed at that time. Maybe you could elaborate on that beginning, like how many stores did you onboard when you started with S4D, and how did that go with people being on site and this type of stuff? I think that's maybe it's an interesting story, let's say it like that. I think it was a hectic time for you back then.
For sure. To put some background for the story, is our relationship with our previous supplier broke down when they found out that we were looking into kind of other parties and when we were looking into switching to S4D. So when they found that out, they essentially attempted to extort us for a large sum of money to kind of facilitate a transition period, which we weren't happy with. So we called S4D, called Benjamin. I remember the evening quite well. And just a phone call with Benjamin where I was just asking how quickly can we integrate all, I think it was 160 stores at the time, or 155 or so. So there was a huge effort from the team. I know he got in touch with Philippe and put him on the back burner and kind of said, we need to help Apache out here, which is obviously greatly appreciated. So with that, we got to work. Some of the team from S4D came out to head office. We had all hands on deck. We set up our kind of ops team. Our office team was working on the kind of menu side and getting all the configuration ready. We had our ops team calling each store, getting all the information we need to get set up and get actually installed into all the stores. So one team would call, get them set up with a remote desktop situation, and then get them pass that information over to the IT side, which is myself and Thomas and the team, and then the install would happen in the background essentially while they might still be on the phone doing other computers. We were installing them one by one as they went along. And then,
in what time frame did you onboard all stores, all 160 stores?
I think it was within 2 weeks.
Okay.
We had the POS installed on every store. From that point on, we had what I think now, looking back on it, was actually a really nice tool, and I think the franchisees loved it. Was we just set up the most basic spreadsheet and just shared it out as a Google sheet to all stores, and this was our feedback sheet. Everyone had access to it. Everyone could see everything that was going on, and because everyone was in it together, they could see someone put up an issue, and they would go, okay, someone's put it there. There's an answer to it. There was a lot less worry. Everyone was involved. That was like a form of live communication with all franchisees for the entire process. That was up for the first couple of months, where that was monitored every single minute of every night, essentially.
So in that 2 weeks, did you then sleep or not?
No, I got some sleep in there. The stores do close, thankfully.
Okay. Yeah. And then with making that move, you had suddenly you had your e-commerce site, like the website, app, loyalty, and the POS site in one place. So what was the plus of having everything in one system actually on the digital side?
So we did have that before, but where it really came in as a difference is the menu management system, the way it all came from one centralized source. The fact that from a reporting side and a data structure side, it's all coming from the same place and somewhere that we can get insights from, as well as the fact that it's all live all the time. Makes it a lot easier to manage on an ongoing basis. We can make changes. They happen. They're live instantly if we want them to be. So it fits with Apache's kind of fast fail approach to the job. If we're more, we'll put something in place. If it doesn't work, we just take it out.
Okay.
And we'll learn from that and move forward. Maybe we try introduce it, make tweaks. But instead of agonizing over every little detail and trying to make sure it's perfect on go one, we're more likely to kind of do it. If there's an issue, fix it, and it's out there.
Okay, that makes sense. And as you're referring, all the data in one place, how do you use the data in making decisions on a headquarter level for your strategy towards the future?
So using that data, it's obviously just helps massively with campaigns and campaign tracking, getting our success metrics and KPIs down and actually functional. Whereas before we were not really tracking it or relying a little bit too heavily on either the POS supplier or the marketing agency for information. Now we're a lot more involved and aware. We're able to kind of see that information ourselves, make our own insights and conclusions from it, rather than relying on conclusions of people who may not know the business as well as we might.
Okay, makes sense. And the other point you addressed, like the menu management, I think you shared with me before, you had someone, when you do big changes in menu management, in the menu, someone had to wake up at 3 o'clock. So maybe you could tell me a bit the old story and the new story, because I think that
sure.
That's an interesting one, let's say it like that.
Yeah. So before with our old supplier, we had that kind of singular menu system where you would have to copy over menus. So it was a case where if we had a full national menu change, price changes, new products, everything else, someone in head office, I've done it a couple of times, and Sonia is fantastic in head office. I'm sure a couple of you might have, a couple of the S4D people in there might have had a chance to work with Sonia. She's fantastic, but she used to get up in the middle of the night, essentially starting from like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and start copying over menus. So you pre-make the menu to match the changes, but then you'd have to copy the menu into every single story. And the process of copying each of those menus took like 15 minutes. So it's like every 15 minutes you're on to move to the next menu to do each store, essentially. So that went through the whole way from 2 o'clock in the morning all the way until midday that day, focusing on the stores that opened up early in the night, and then the stores that open at 4 or 5 o'clock were towards the 2-3 o'clock period, towards the end of the shift. It was a long and grueling
intense process. And how is that? Yeah, how is that now handled then?
So now we because it's all managed centrally, we make the change the morning of. We don't have a preparation procedure, essentially, but we make the change the morning of. If there's a whole load of changes, we will get 2 or 3 of us to kind of, okay, you do these pizza price changes and I'll do these side price changes, whatever else. We'll split up the work. Some will do, maybe one will do NI, the others will do ROI, that's Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. We're in a multi, we've got two systems running, essentially, because we've got 2 currencies. So we've got two menus to manage as well, which introduces its own challenges, but with S4D, it's completely manageable.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I'm getting here a question in regarding the other subject we just discussed, the data. So yeah, what kind of data is like important for you, and how has it helped in Apache's growth, the data side?
So I think one of the realizations for me when I started with S4D was just the importance of kind of A/B testing, and the fact that when you're looking at data and you're looking at research or something else that's the best, or if you look up best approach and best UI or whatever else in certain situations, there was a realization that when we actually started testing, that the best approach isn't always the best approach for your market.
Okay.
Where we're in a situation where we've got 2 markets. So I think the data from actually looking at your user data, your transactions, your conversion rates, for your web data, in the using the A/B testing is so crucial, because it's so different country to country, market to market. We have Northern Ireland and Ireland, and the difference, even in our top deals, our top everything else, is completely different to the south there. It is 2 completely different markets. So
okay.
Being aware of that is crucial.
you zoom down now more, let's say, on the e-commerce side, or the consumer-facing product. And how does the data help you more, let's say, than optimizing the stores? What are the key data that you look at there?
So for optimizing the stores, we launched, so before we had nothing. So we're coming from a place of not monitoring anything, to a place where we now started monitoring the delivery areas. So we have to first focus on getting the stores to use the system, to mark those data points and get them using it correctly so that we can get the data in. So we focus on our dispatch rate to make sure that every delivery order is dispatched through the dispatching system. And then once that's now in the kind of high 98% to 99% orders dispatched. Beyond that, then we have to work on returning the order and making sure that it's returned in a timely manner. So when we first launched, we had issues where the drivers or the stores would go, okay, I have to use this dispatching system. So they would mark the order as out for delivery, and then they would just mark it back just so that it goes through the dispatching system. That's obviously bad data. So
yeah, exactly.
then we had to start looking into the bad data. So now we're at a point where we've got our bad data down to kind of 1%, 2%, 3% some weeks. We've got our dispatching up above the kind of 98%. So we're looking at a good chunk of good data, and now the FBLs and the area managers are able to push the stores to make sure that they keep their bad data down, keep their dispatched orders up, and because of that, they are fairly confident that they can say that this is an accurate delivery time. So we can get our delivery times down below the 30-minute mark.
Okay. So then the benchmark is 30 minutes, and now with using the system, you have the amount of minutes that it is delivered. And for example, if you see, hey, this store is always doing 1 hour delivery, you have the data that you can point to and say, okay, something is going wrong here. We know it because we have the data, and you have an objective conversation, let's say, it about it, right?
But to briefly answer that question, you can't actually have there is the data that's important, or the most important data is what's important to the business needs at that time. So for a time, our most important data was dispatch numbers, or percent dispatched. Then it was the bad data, clearing that number down. Now it's our 30% mark.
Okay, exactly. Just a heads up for the people who are attending, like we will soon go to the Q&A question, so feel free to drop a question there and we can answer them. And also looking to the future, what do you think is the future for the quick service restaurant industry? From what's your perspective, what's going to happen in the upcoming years?
I think online will grow to a point. I think in Ireland, again, I'll dip back into markets are going to be different everywhere. I feel like Ireland itself is quite a face-to-face country, a phone call country. More so compared to other countries and other cities, maybe, where there is a significant amount of people who will prefer to go and collect. They'll go and collect their order rather than pay €2-3 for a delivery charge. They don't mind going and doing that journey, saying hi to the people behind the counter. So I think kiosks will become an assisted thing. So you have your kiosks, but you also have your person in store who can help and also help with the kiosks. So instead of it being an order taking situation, maybe you have someone that's out in the kiosks or in the kiosk area helping the customers where they need something like that. And obviously if there's no one at the kiosks, then they're back taking phone calls or doing orders that way. I think with AI progressing as it is, I feel like phone calls will become like an AI progress, essentially. Like I'm sure you're already able to do order via phone and stuff like that. But I'm just thinking, you call up, you give your address, you give your order, and the AI just interprets that and puts it into the system. That's probably a bit further down the line, but I think voice, like a voice to order, will become quite key. Whether that can then also be applied on the website. If you go kind of voice to order, you just say your order and it puts it in the cart for you. You check it and you click checkout. Same way as you call, you could use that same system to call and go there. Same way as a lot of things are moving towards the smart homes, your Alexas, your Google Homes, and kind of more smart devices. That step of being able to bring the ordering process to voice makes it a lot more accessible in the home.
Interesting. So actually, instead of phone, you go more to voice and then connect it to the systems. Correct me. Do I conclude that right or not?
Yeah, I would have thought so. I think that's where we'll end up. And then you'll still have people that want to talk to someone. But to do that, I think they'll have to go into the store where there's the kiosks and the person there, the friendly person, ready to help.
But then you also see how now you have someone often who's focused on the order intaker, that person will maybe be more next to the kiosk, for example, or
not necessarily next to the kiosk all the time, but more focused on customer experience.
Yeah, in a wider sense, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Make sure that they're happy with the system, that everything's gone well for them, and making sure that there's no issues.
Okay, before going into the Q&A, I think, is there something that maybe we didn't discuss and you think, okay, this is something that we maybe discussed before? You think, that's another interesting thing about the partnership with S4D, or what you see in trends in general?
I guess something on the hardware independence. It's quite nice from a perspective of backups, being hardware independent. I know we've had stores that have like lost power, or multiple PCs have broken at the front. The fact that you can just take out a laptop, hotspot it to your 4G if your internet is down on your phone, and continue taking orders, that kind of reliability is quite crucial.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. So hardware independence is of course a cost saver when onboarding, maybe also new stores, but also when you make a move to another system for the stores. But also you say that because you're not forced to use that hardware, you can also save. Yeah, when stuff is down, you have an alternative, right? Is that how I hear it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, then I want to go to the Q&A section. I have here some pretty long question, but I will read it up and let me know what you think, Jordan. So looking at the bigger picture, what impact has the hardware independent software solution on the overall business strategy and competitiveness in the market?
Okay, so this is essentially for competitiveness in the market. I think I touched on that earlier in terms of the initial cost or buy-in cost.
Yeah.
Right. So hardware independence, in terms of your buy-in costs, is a huge factor for. It's one of the main reasons why Apache was able to grow so rapidly. We did a lot of work to bring our initial costs down to bare minimum, essentially. So that I know just one example is we opened a store. One store was a flip from a chipper. I think the entire store opening cost, I think it was 40K. That was the lowest. It's an extreme example, but that was the lowest. 40K to open up a store is insane in my mind anyway.
True.
Where you think of maybe Subways or Pizza Huts or whatever else, they're in the 150, 200K range when you include all these things like tilings and stuff like that. So we bring our branding down into something that you can work with and kind of place like these kind of wood panelings and stuff like that, to give an Apache look and feel without really converting the space. or making massive changes or costly changes. So the hardware independence kind of leads into that as well, where with hardware growth, Moore's law, transistors getting smaller and smaller in smaller and smaller spaces, the best deals aren't the ones that you made a couple months ago. So hardware is always going to grow, and the best bang for your buck in terms of hardware is what you find kind of today that's on special, on offer, on deal, right?
Yeah.
So there's a bit of that. You can keep your costs down from that perspective. But also you get to stay out of from a head office perspective, you get to stay out of the whole supplier breakdowns issues side of it. We outsource that entirely. So that is done with our hardware support partner. And just within that, we get to stay out of any mess. If there's any breakdowns issues, none of that is on us. Whereas if it's with a specific, or if it's specific hardware for a specific system, then that specific hardware, if there's a fault, it's not, it is your fault, essentially.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
You get to stay out of that, which also helps keep a healthy franchisee relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that question is answered in a very good way. So I have another question, like what were the aspects Apache Pizza was looking for when choosing a reliable digital partner?
So I remember just the first time I went over to Amsterdam to meet up with S4D. We'd met them. They'd come over to Dublin at this point, but one of the first times I went over to Amsterdam to meet up, I remember sitting in an office with Perry and Benjamin, the CEO, where we were just talking about our vision for where we see the system in the future. And it was at the point where everything that we were talking about was either already planned, or everything that they were mentioning was something that I had already wanted. So I think one of the key selling factors for S4D was, for me at least, was the fact that we had a very similar shared vision for where we wanted the system to be. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you're looking for more specifics.
No, maybe I think this is very clear. What was another point maybe in making that choice? Because this is a very specific point that you look to the future together in a way, and also share that vision towards the future, right?
Yeah.
And,
so the other most important factor is always going to come down to cost. It has to be financially viable. It has to the most benefit for your buck, essentially. And with S4D, they have that going for them. We came from a place where we were the biggest client of the previous POS supplier. So we were the driving factor behind most of the development, which turned out to be really costly. They weren't pushing themselves. They were instead using us as a funding for the developments that we were striving for. Whereas when you look at our relationship now with S4D, S4D has the benefit of having ourselves, our research, Apache's research. We've got the research of other New York Pizza and all these other chains and these brilliant people, and S4D themselves, all that coming together to define what the system would look like going forward, where you wouldn't necessarily have that with someone that you were the sole driving factor of. That's not necessarily going to be applicable to everybody, but
no, I think it makes sense. Like, to be very clear, like with S4D, we focus on quick service restaurant chains, and our system is specifically built for that. So if you, for example, and it's for chains, it's not for individual stores, right? So then like Apache or Taylor Pizza or New York Pizza or Trenta Pizza, like they all have like a same need, right? And then if you bundle that together, all these knowledge and the input from all these different parties, and you have your own vision, and then you can come something that keeps moving forward. And that's also what we're proud of. Yeah, this is a nice question. You opened so many stores in like 2 weeks. What was the biggest concern and challenge, and how did you overcome this? Also very impressive.
Yeah, so we had the biggest concern, surprisingly, wasn't actually the installs. The biggest concern was franchisee buy-in. It all happened so quickly that that it was difficult to get the franchisees to really want to adopt the system. Change is always scary for anybody. We did have the added benefit of we weren't going to be able to use that system that for much longer, so that kind of gave it a deadline. But even after, we had issues where the POS company, or the old POS company, was trying to kind of make contracts without our permission underneath the like just directly with the franchisees so that they could continue using the system. So I think just dealing with that whole side of it, there was a lot of kind of legal side of that, which I don't want to go too far into, but that was definitely the biggest challenge with that, which is a good thing from S4D's point of view, because that's to say that none of the install side of it was the challenge.
Okay, clear. And the last serious question for me to you: what are the top 3 things that if you want to grow with your restaurant chain, like what should you keep in mind, or maybe you have a top 2?
Yeah, so for growth, I touched on it there. I think keeping your opening costs as low as possible, especially if you are like just starting off, doing as much as you can to help anybody who wants to join you and join your brand. Keeping that, like, I know back when we started, we covered like a lot of signage costs that kind of came out of the marketing funds and stuff like that. Don't be greedy in terms of expansion. Don't put, like, looking at an opening cost as that's you have to do that opening cost. Work with the person to make sure that it's financially viable, and make sure that they can get open. If you believe in your own business, you know it's going to be a success, then you know that they'll be able to kind of bring it back. It also goes a long way in terms of the franchisee or whoever's opening with you, then to that relationship is then really strong. Okay,
interesting. So then maybe for the people that are attending and are going to visit Ireland and the upcoming for the next visit, what should they eat at Apache? What is your most famous dish?
Our most famous dish is the Create-Your-Own. We focus on serving what you like. So okay. I'd recommend getting what you like on the pizza.
Awesome. So Jordan, thank you very much. We want to stay between 45 minutes and an hour. So I want to thank you very much. And I just want to announce like the next webinar. So the next webinar, I'm going to share my screen, is going to be in September 6th. We're going to have a webinar with David Beentjes, who is the managing partner of Level Up Group, and we will dive into how to successfully implement a digital marketing strategy for quick service restaurant chains. So I think with S4D, we provide a platform for you to have that A/B testing, that website that's working, that app that's working, the loyalty program that comes to it. But we're looking one step before, like how to drive that traffic in that way. And David has experience with big names on this. So we're diving into this one, next one. And Jordan, I hope to see you also next time, maybe on the digital marketing side. So thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.